Hello and welcome friends to this discussion on the fourth unit in Indian economy, um, in which we'll be basically talking about poverty and unemployment. So let us start with poverty first. What basically is poverty? We have been all reading about poverty right since our childhood, and you have probably written about poverty in so many different essays. You would have read about poverty, but then here now we are going to have more technical discussion on poverty rather than rhetorical discussion which we keep having outside our classrooms. Now basically poverty is lack of enough material possessions or income for a person's need. So if a particular individual does not have sufficient possession so that he can fulfill his basic needs. Now please understand, these needs are basic: food, clothing and shelter. Then he is said to be poor. He is said to be engulfed in poverty. So if he does not have enough to satisfy his basic needs. Now poverty has got different types, and we have to understand what different types of poverty are there. So one categorization tells us that there are two types of poverty. One is the absolute poverty, the other one is the relative poverty. Now let us understand the difference between the two. Complete lack of means to meet basic personal needs. So absolute poverty is complete lack of means to meet basic personality needs. Food, shelter and clothing is not available. Potable water means water which is fit to drink, which is fit to consume. Sanitation facilities are not available. Health, education, information not available. So these are now basic personal needs, without which it is difficult for an individual to survive. So if even these things are not able, if he is not able to have access to these things because of lack of the ability to purchase these things, then he is said to be suffering from absolute poverty. Again, the threshold or the limit is the same and independent of one's location in society. It would be same across the countries. I will give an example. The World Bank, according to World Bank, the poverty line is $1.9. $1.9, if you translate it, it would be somewhere around 150 rupees per day, because $1 in India, if we talk about the Indian currency's value, it is around rupees 75. So I'm just giving a rough estimate. It would be around rupees 150 per day. Now this is the absolute poverty line, and this would be the same across the countries, across the region. All those families, like yours, which have been earning more than rupees 150 per person per day, they are above the poverty line, while those are earning less than rupees 150 per person per day, they are below the poverty line. Let me clarify it a little. What do we mean by this? Let's suppose that you are a family of 4 members, right? And only your mother is an earning member of the family. So all 3 other members are dependent on her, let's say. I'm just taking an example. So to be above poverty line, she should be able to earn rupees 150 per day per person, which means for the family of 4, the earning should be rupees 600 per day, 150 into 4. Then only it would be 150 per person. So if there are the number of members in the family is 4, then you should be earning rupees 600 per day. And how much should be the monthly salary? Rupees 600 into 30, which means rupees 18,000 should be the monthly salary. Then your family would be considered above poverty line. Please understand this calculation very important, because otherwise we have wrong notions about how to calculate poverty lines or how to find out whether somebody is poor or not. So this is how you find out whether a particular family is poor or not. So you have to translate the per capita per day poverty line into per day poverty line for the family, and then you have to multiply it by 30 to find out per month poverty line for the family. Then you compare it with the salary that the family is earning, or the earning member in the family earns, and then you can find out whether the family belongs to the APL section or the BPL section. Fine. So this was just a diversion from what we basically are studying here, but this is again an important piece of information, so I thought it was the right time to communicate this particular information to you. Now, as I was telling you, as far as absolute poverty is concerned, and I was quoting the example of World Bank poverty line, according to them, $1.9, around 150 rupees per day per person is the poverty line. So somebody who is earning less than that is poor as far as World Bank definition goes, and those who are earning more than that, they are rich. They are at least not BPL, they are not below poverty line, they are APLs, above poverty line as far as the World Bank definition goes, right? And please understand, this absolute poverty threshold is same across the regions, same across the country. Now have a look at the relative poverty. Now relative poverty is what? I'll give you a crude example. If you talk about the batchmates that you have, I believe almost all of you belong to APL families. You are not, none of your families is a BPL family, below poverty line family, right? Even then, there are some of the batchmates who have a bike, and they probably are also, their family also owns a car, so they drive to the college in their cars. And then there are others who maybe take a public transport and then they walk to the college. Now the ones who walk to the college, they perceive themselves to be poorer than the one who brings his car to the college. Now this is relative poverty. Have a look at the definition here. Inability to enjoy a minimum level of living standards compared to others in the same time and place. So relative poverty, why is it called relative? Because it is relative to somebody else who is richer than you. Somebody is poorer relative to somebody else. That was not the case as far as absolute poverty was concerned. We said $1.9 per day per person, absolute poverty level. If you are earning more than that, you are above the poverty line. If you are earning less than that, you are below the poverty line. So that was not the case with absolute poverty. But relative poverty, we are saying if you are earning less than what somebody else is earning, then we will call you poor, or you would be termed as a poor, or maybe belonging to a poor section of the society. So relative poverty is, as the name itself clarifies, itself reveals, relative poverty is relative. Fine. Now again, threshold varies from one country to the other, and threshold is set at median income in most countries. Now what is the threshold that is set? This is the median income, and it may vary from one country to the other. Is it fine? We'll have a look at an example, and then you probably would be able to understand it better. But please understand that the threshold would be different in different countries, and it would, in many of the countries, it is set at the median income. What do we mean by this? We'll have a look. I have taken up this particular example to make you understand better the difference between absolute and the relative poverty. Now have a look at this table. You understand, in the first column we have basically mentioned the names of 5 individuals, A, B, C, D, E, and in the second column is the earnings per day for them. Is this fine? So they are earning different amounts. A is earning 13 and D is earning 20, and so on and so forth. Now let's say in the third and the fourth column we are talking about the absolute poverty levels, and we are trying to find out which of these individuals belong to the APL sections, above poverty line, and which one belongs to the BPL or the below poverty line sections. BPL sections have been shown in red, APL have been shown with the green background, right? If, have a look at the third column now. You want me to make it more clearer, I'll do that for you. So absolute poverty, if the absolute poverty line is rupees 15, now this has been fixed. Whosoever is earning below than that, and this is per day, right? So if the absolute poverty line has been fixed as rupees 15 per day, whosoever is earning less than that is a BPL. 13 is BPL because he is earning less than 15, but 17, 19, 20, 97, all of them are earning more than, they are earning more than rupees 15, so they are all APLs, above poverty line. Now on the other hand, if the poverty line has been shifted a little higher and it has been shifted to rupees 25, you would find that this time, in this particular instance, A, B, C and even D is earning less than what? They are all earning less than rupees 25, and that is why they are all BPLs. On the other hand, E is earning 97, a big amount, and that is why, because 97 is greater than 25, E is an APL, above poverty line individual, right? Now let's talk about relative poverty line. Okay, before discussing relative poverty line, let me take another example. Suppose had there been 5 individuals, A, B, C, D, and E, and suppose they are all earning above 25. Let's say they are earning 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. What would have happened? All of them would have been APL, right? None of them would have been a BPL if they are all earning rupees 25, more than rupees 25, right? Which means, as far as absolute poverty lines are concerned, you may so find that all the population is above APL, or above the poverty line, or all the population is also, it is very possible to have all the population below the poverty line also. Fine, but in relative poverty line, you have some part of the population above and some part of the population below the poverty line for sure. Now, why? Now here, poverty line has been set at first quartile value. First quartile value, I hope you understand, 25%. We have discussed this in statistics. First quartile value is that value below which 25% of the value, overall values lie, and above which 75% of the overall values lie. Here, A, B, C, D, there are 5 individuals, there are 5 values, and basically the first quartile is rupees 14. Below rupees 14, 25% of the values lie, and above rupees 14, 75% of the values lie, and that is why this is the first quartile. I hope you would be able to recall the method that you use there to find out the first quartile and the third quartile and the median. So you have to use the same method. If you are not able to recall that, just for now try and understand that this is the first quartile value. So all those who are earning above rupees 14, they are all earning above 14, so they are APLs. The one who is earning less than 14, that person has got to be a BPL, right? Now if I shift my relative poverty line to the median value, what do we mean by this? Median value is the value which is exactly at the midpoint, in the sense that 50% of the value lie above that median value and 50% of the value lie below that median value. A little while ago, in the last slide that we discussed, we talked about the median value as being the threshold for calculating relative poverty in many of the countries, right? So here, have a look at these 5 values, and which one is the median value? Now this is the median value. Why? Because 2 values lie above this value and 2 values lie below this value, or let's say 2 values lie above this value and 2 values lie below this value. So this is the median value, and if the poverty line has been set at rupees 19, all those who are earning less than rupees 19, they would be BPLs, and those who are earning above rupees 19, they would be APLs, and this particular individual who is earning rupees 19 will be exactly at the poverty line. He would neither be a BPL or an APL as such. So what do you understand by this? Basically, absolute poverty line could be set in a manner that it is possible to have all the population above poverty line and all the population below poverty line. Let me take an example again. Suppose absolute poverty line is, suppose it is 10. What will happen now? Suppose it is 10. It has been fixed at 10. What will happen? All the people here would be APLs. Don't you think? Supposing, I'm just taking this example. Suppose the absolute poverty line has been set at rupees 10. Every single individual will be earning about rupees 10, and 100% of the population will be APL. There would be no BPL. No BPL, right? No BPL. On the other hand, if let's say the absolute poverty line has been set at rupees 100, what would be the problem now? If absolute poverty line has been set at rupees 100, then there would be, do you think anybody would be above poverty line? There would be nobody who would be above poverty line, and there would be no APL. There would be no APL, nobody who is earning more than rupees 100 per day, so there would be no APL. But however, This is just not possible with the relative poverty line, because the relative poverty line will lie somewhere between the lowest and the highest value. It is first quartile will be between the lowest and the highest value, means 13 and 97. So it has got to be between the lowest and the highest value. So it has got to be somewhere between. Again, rupees 19 somewhere between. So which means in relative poverty, when you go for relative poverty measurements, at least some of the population would be poor, because they would be poorer in comparison to the others. I'll take this up again. For example, let me take this one. The median value is 19, which means these people are poorer than those who are earning 19 or more than that, and these people are richer than those who are earning. They are richer than those who are earning rupees 19 or less than that. So this is the basic difference between absolute versus relative poverty line. In India, we have gone for absolute poverty line, right? If you go for relative poverty lines, at least some of the population would be below poverty line, but that may not be the case with absolute poverty line. It may so happen that the absolute poverty lines, as I've taken up in this particular example, they've been fixed at 10 and 100. In case of 10, there would be no BPL. In case of 100, there would be no APL. So this might also happen. So these are the basic differences between absolute and relative poverty lines. Now, let me talk about the other two types that we have. The secondary poverty. Now, what is the meaning of secondary poverty? I'll give you a crude example. You belong to a rich family, you're driving a car, and let's say you also bought a 1,75,000 rupee bike. There are bikes like this which are there in the market, and now since you have spent so much on these kind of things, you simply don't have the money to pay your college fee. Now this is secondary poverty. Now why has this happened in the first place? Please understand, you are unable to fulfill your basic needs. You are not able to get yourself enrolled into the college, or buy some books for yourself, or buy some food for yourself. So these are all basic needs, and you are unable to fulfill them because of profligate expenditure. You have been very, very profligate. You have spent like anything on things other than necessities. We have taken up this example here on things other than necessities. It could be a cake, it could be a chocolate, it could be a car. So on these kind of things, you have spent unnecessarily a very high amount. Because of this, you simply do not have the money to spend on basic needs. Is this understood? And that is why this is what basically is secondary poverty. Is this fine? And really, this is very, very bad. Hopefully there would be chances that there are people, if you look at the scenario as far as our state is concerned, there are people who spend a lot on alcoholic drinks, on alcohol, and because of that they are left with very little money to feed their own family. Now this is an example of secondary poverty, right? Okay, now let us now understand what is urban poverty. Poverty which exists in rural areas. People who are below poverty line in rural areas, they are considered rural poor, and those who are below poverty line in urban areas, they are considered to be urban poor. Because of this COVID-19 and lockdown, and because of the impact of this 2.5 month long lockdown, there are people, the rural poor who had earlier migrated to urban areas, now they are returning to their families and to their villages in the remotest parts of the country. So now what is rural and what is urban, that is clear to you, but then there is a line of thought which says that urban poverty is nothing but an extension of rural poverty. So one school of thought says that rural poverty is different from the urban poverty, because rural poverty is people living in rural areas. People living in urban areas, poor, below poverty line, they are urban poor. So there's a difference between rural and urban poverty. And please understand, the poverty lines for rural as well as urban areas are not set at the same point. They are set a little away from each other, which means in the rural areas the poverty line is set a notch below the poverty line in the urban areas. The reason is, in rural areas, what is the reason? In rural areas, many a times the inflation is much less. right? And because of which you would be able to buy your necessities by spending a little less money than in the urban areas. So that is why in rural areas the poverty lines are generally set a little lower. We'll have a detailed discussion on that also. So this is one school of thought. The other school of thought says that there is no dichotomy or no difference between rural and urban poverty, because urban poverty is just an extension of rural poverty. Why? Because those people who are really poor, those who are below poverty line, they are simply not able to fulfill their basic needs because of various reasons, because of unremunerative agriculture, because of not having good employment opportunities in their villages back home. They migrate to the urban areas, and many of them, they are still not able to find a really good earning job, a well earning job for themselves. They still remain poor. So basically, a person who was basically part of the rural poor community now he has migrated to an urban area, but he's still not able to earn well. So now he's become part of the urban poor community. So poverty is nothing. Urban poverty is nothing but an extension of rural poverty to urban areas by way of migration from the rural to urban areas of those people who are really poor and who are not able to satisfy their basic needs in the rural areas. So they migrate to the urban areas. So in that sense, they now become urban poors, and earlier they basically were rural poors. So this is how there is a difference of opinion in the two schools of thought. So that is all for today. In the next session we'll be discussing about poverty in a little more detail, and we'll have some technical discussions also regarding how the poverty line is decided. The level of poverty line is decided here in India. Thank you very much.